So the idea of us getting together was really because, well, you kind of know my background because I came and saw you. So, you know, I coached people around mental health issues, anxiety, you know, all those kinds of things. And I guess you and I started to speak because I thought, certainly from my background, looking at my mum, and the issues that she faced, but clearly didn't talk about because it wasn't that generation.
Yeah.
And then the issues kind of that I faced over the last 5 to 10 years and my own kind of brush with depression.
Yeah.
I thought that's where we'd initially start, really, with the,
Yeah.
you know,
Absolutely.
what's the links to that. But I just wondered whether it would be good to set the scene
Yeah.
in terms of like what you do, what your background is,
Why I did it.
yeah, why you did it, yeah,
Yeah.
all those things.
Absolutely. You're right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So obviously, I got Bristol Menopause Clinic, which has been going for coming up for 18 months now. And my background is I was a nurse, an advanced nurse practitioner in practice, and I've been doing women's health since 2006. And in those days, it was really well funded. We had a 2 hours a week, 2.5 hours a week um, clinic, walking clinic for any women who wanted to come in to talk about anything to do with their health.
Yeah.
So not chronic disease, but menopause, contraception, did their smears, any breast problems, anything like that, and healthy living. And then I did that. And then in about 2010, I moved practice to a different practice. Didn't have the fun. We didn't have the funding there to do any of the women's health, but we were really up on it because it was a completely different demographic of women.
Yeah.
So when I did the women's health stuff, it was in a much poorer area of Bristol. Then I moved up to Henleys, and of course, women's expectations were much higher there.
Yeah.
So we had to be on the ball, and so it progressed from there really. And then I sort of trained up to be a AMP as they were coming into fashion, did my prescribing, but carried on as my little background thing was doing my women's health. And then it got that I was doing less and less of it.
Yeah.
And GPs don't get paid to do HRT and menopause. So of course it dropped off the whole agenda in a way. And of
Okay.
course, the whole thing with what Davina did was GPs don't get educated in it. Well, actually, back in 2006, 2006 to 2010, our local medical committee, which is called the LMC, they used to run training days on menopause, on HRT, on contraception. They don't tend to do it so much now, but I think it will come back in.
Mm.
But they're not doing it. So they haven't done it for years. So that's where it came from to. And then one day I just went, actually, I really like my women's health. So I want to do it. And I had a really traumatic time in my menopause myself. So I went to my GP. I started off with having really bad PMT when I hit about 48, 49, and I was getting suicidal before my period
Wow.
every month. And I didn't think what it was. I wasn't on any contraception or anything. And so I wasn't taking any hormones of any sort. And I went to see my GP. First thing they did, you need antidepressants.
Yeah.
I went, I'm not having antidepressants. Said, you might as well forget that. So threw the prescription away. Then I went back to see a different GP who gave me the old pregnant horse urine HRT, so Prempax C, the stuff that all the Women's Health Initiative study was done. And then from there, I paid privately in the end. I went to see someone and then realized that, and so I got sorted. But the one thing they didn't do was ever follow me up. So they saw me once and never followed me up. I didn't have anyone I could email or access. And so that was that. So I always had this burning desire. And in practice, when I was doing menopause stuff with women in HRT, I gave them open access to come and see me. And then when I had the opportunity and I'd had enough, and I thought, actually, I can do something different. and I set up Bristol Menopause with a view to doing it so it's not too expensive. And once women have been to see me, they have open access to come and email me, ask me any questions, any problems they've got, and stuff like that. So that's how it all started.
And I can vouch for the fact that you do that, because I have emailed you a few times, and sometimes I've been amazed by how quick you've responded. But I think you're right. It's and damn Davina, actually, because we did have this scheduled way before the program was scheduled.
Absolutely,
we kind of look like we're just getting on the bandwagon, but it's not about that. But and actually, anything that's done in that space to raise visibility is great. So I'm only having a laugh. But I do think, like my own when I look back, and I was going in and out of the GP with various things, and I remember one occasion I went in and I said, look, I've got eczema, eczema patches everywhere, I'm itching, I feel really fatigued, I've suddenly got indigestion, I suddenly seem to be intolerant to certain foods, and I was a little bit gobsmacked at the response, because at the end of the session, I said, well, next time, because I was prescribed a load of pills or creams or potions, whatever, next time, should I book a double session to discuss these things? And the answer was, why don't you just come back with one thing next time?
Wow, that doesn't surprise me though. That doesn't.
And I was gutted, because actually, when I look back now, I think to myself, wow, actually, I probably had menopausal symptoms, but because I was, I was probably in my late 40s, I was fit and healthy, I had no health issues. It wasn't even discussed and actually, I think at one stage later on after that, they did do a hormone test and it was normal. So I thought that would be a good one to discuss with you, is when is normal not normal?
Okay, so normal is not normal at any time. So it's assumed, what the big thing to remember is, if you're over 45, it is assumed that you're perimenopausal nowadays, or it should be. So you don't need any blood tests to check. But if suddenly you've gone from being confident or happy to one day feeling really miserable, or suddenly you feel anxious about the smallest things, and you might have had anxiety when you were young, and this leads on to a whole thing of, and we will go off topic, but we won't go off topic today. I'd really like to talk about hormones in general, and women's health and women's mental health, because that's a whole big issue out there that needs to be discussed and hasn't been yet. But anyway, let's get on with this. So basically, I think, so you don't need a blood test. Your periods don't have to have changed. But if you if you do suddenly feel anxious, lose confidence, feel low one day, fine the next, and you'll know it's very different from normal depression, because with normal depression, you're in a flat place all the time. With this, you'll be up and down like a yo-yo. GPs at the age of 45 and over, they should not be giving you antidepressants for those symptoms. And they should not say to you, well, your periods haven't stopped or changed, so you can't have HRT.
Well, no, because I mean, I'm 56. My period stopped last year. The year running up to that, okay, they were slightly off up until that point. So up until 54, which is actually assumed quite late, they were bang on the clock, 28 days. I could set my clock by it. So I was just like, well, I must have loads of hormones then, because they're coming every 28 days like normal. But no.
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing. And it's that suddenly it can be really small things that make you realize, but they don't, because we don't. And women, I think the research shows that women end up going to see the GP for lots and lots of little things before the GP picks up that actually, or doesn't pick up that it's menopause related. So you might go to your optician because you've got irritated eyes, can't sit in the sun for more than 5 minutes. That's usually lack of estrogen. So there's lots of little things, but because it's not classically night sweats and hot flushes,
it gets dismissed.
It's dismissed. Yeah. Absolutely.
And that is a shame, isn't it? Because in a society, well, in fact, menopause is a bit of a dirty word when I was growing up, because I assumed it happened to old people, as you do, and you had white hair or grey hair, and that's what happened. And it was almost a bit of a stigma that almost life was over by that stage, so certainly I alluded to my mum didn't talk about it at all, other than moaning that she thought her periods would have stopped way before they did. But I do think I am surprised that I've had to go hunting on the internet. I found you through the internet.
Yeah.
And actually it was sparked off, interestingly, this is where it'd be an interesting generation thing. It was sparked off, I think I told you this, with a conversation with my son, who kind of laughingly said, well, when I'm older, I'm going to get on the roids, not like as in banned substances, but in terms of anything to make him maintain his muscular physique. Why wouldn't I want to do that? And he went, you need to get on that, Mum. So we had this whole kind of discussion about, well, it's not natural, and I've been trying natural for a few years. And then I suddenly kind of went, why am I doing this? My sleep is crap. I can't function throughout the day. I've got a busy job. Come on, Michelle, kind of. And then I found you. So yeah.
It's so true, though. It is absolutely so true. And I think that's the thing. And we also, it is a dirty word. And actually the other side of it is that everyone's frightened of HRT.
Yeah.
And I think that's another big issue. And that's probably another day for another discussion around that as well. But there's loads.
I would like that.
We'll line them all up as a sequence. But there is a big need that we need to talk about menopause so much more. I think we need to be talking to women in their 30s to be prepared.
Well, I said, actually, I must get this in. This is hilarious, because when we were talking, I said to you, if there was a willy in the sentence, we'd have had it sus by now.
Absolutely.
And actually, I'm sat there giggling, but I'm just like, we haven't really moved forward that far in this arena, have we, really? And I think I only really started investigating it when I saw Carol Vorderman. I didn't see her because obviously I work, so I just had seen something on Facebook or a post, and then I went to look, and I was gobsmacked, because at the time I'd gone through this phase where I thought I was going through depression again, but it was like, you talk about anxiety. I'd wake up in the morning and I would be scared of opening up my email account in case something was there, but I couldn't tell you what I was expecting. There was nothing to expect. And I would jump at like the corner of my car if something flashed by. I mean, I'd jump out of my skin and I'd be so anxious, and I thought there's something wrong here. And then in her interview, she said this impending sense of doom just came out of nowhere, and I'm like, oh my God. But interestingly, she talked about she went to Harley Street. So in my head, I'm thinking, oh gosh, this is expensive, this is private. She had a mix of estrogen, progesterone and testosterone, which I didn't even know. You put that third part of the pot, but I didn't even know existed. When I did go onto HRT, I wasn't offered the testosterone. I was only offered progesterone and estrogen.
Yeah, because testosterone's not offered in primary care. That's the problem in your GP practice at the moment. That hopefully will change this year. By the end of this year, testosterone should be. It will be the man's one, but actually that's good. At least we're getting it, because how long's it been? And testosterone is the third piece of the jigsaw often, especially when you're postmenopausal, when your periods are stopped. There's two categories where testosterone is really important. For women who are really young, who have premature ovarian insufficiency, so whose ovaries have stopped working when they're young, if they stop working like that, their testosterone falls off a cliff. And women who are postmenopausal. So when your ovaries stop working, your testosterone that's produced in your ovaries drops by 50%. So it's like it just goes, and then The other thing is, because our bodies crave estrogen, it grabs hold of any testosterone that's around the body to use it up to get estrogen. So you end up with no libido, you don't sleep well. It's all part of that.
Gosh.
So yeah, and that's why it's so important, especially postmenopausal, or if you've had a surgical menopause. So if you've had your ovaries taken out and a hysterectomy, and also if you're young having your menopause.
So should we just talk about, like, because I really have tried the natural route, and I've tried acupuncture and certain remedies for it, and I've had variable success rates, I think. But I by the time I saw you, I'd kind of reached my limit in trying to cope with it naturally, and I was just like, I just want to be able to sleep at night and be able to function. So do you want to just kind of give us an overview on, because you know, like when we did the whole slogan of breast is best and made people feel bad for not
Yeah.
being able to breastfeed their babies. Yeah, we don't want to make people feel bad for going natural or bad for going HRT, do we? There's not a one size fits all.
And it shouldn't be fighting each other. And actually, there is a whole point that in your perimenopause, often going the natural route with the over-the-counter stuff like your black cohosh, your St. John's wort, which are both proven to work to help with anxiety and depression in your perimenopause. There is a fact, and I did it myself in my mid-40s. I was on St. John's wort, I was on black cohosh. The one thing I've never taken is sage, because I've never had a hot flush in my life, or red clover isoflavones, because they're both good for that. So if your main issue, even when you're menopausal, is that you've got hot flushes or night sweats, red clover isoflavones, so Premonsil at 80 milligrams, great for it, and that can help. However, the other side of the coin is to remember that actually it's a hormone that you've lost, and as much as you take natural remedies, they're never going to replace that hormone. And that's the big thing to remember. But perimenopause, yeah, often I say to women, things like Angus castus are really good when you're getting PMT and you don't feel great. That can really help. Often you find, though, after a while it stops working.
Because your body kind of almost needs more of it to.
Yeah, absolutely. Because your estrogen is dropping and dropping.
Yeah.
The little bit that's helping is not helping enough.
Yeah.
And that's the issue. But there is definitely a big place for over-the-counter stuff, and it can really help, because actually HRT is not right for everybody. And it's also the other thing I'd say, although it does help, it's not always a panacea.
No. And I think that's the
problem.
For
everything. And that's a big thing to say, and if you need higher and higher doses of estrogen, we need to take a look at why you're needing higher and higher doses of estrogen. And that's the other thing. If you're under 45, going back to blood tests, you need to get your GP to check your vitamin D levels, your vitamin B12 levels, your thyroid function tests, your full blood count, your ferritin and your folate, because actually any of those things can give you similar symptoms to menopausal symptoms.
And that's the trouble, isn't it? Because when you have a lack of information, I don't know, perhaps people are like me, I don't know, but I tend to go internet hunting, which is probably the worst thing you can do in some ways, because in some ways I think it's also helpful to find people like you.
Yeah.
But in other ways, you're almost self-diagnosing, and you could be wrong, and when you look at the list of symptoms, and then you look at other things that are caused by, or symptoms caused by other things, they can be quite similar.
Absolutely. And what I would say is, if someone comes to see me and they end up on the top dose of estrogen and their symptoms are not improving, then I will write to their GP and say, look, can you just check out these bloods? Or ask them to go and see their GP to get those bloods checked out. And then I get them to send them to me. So I'll have a look at them and say, because sometimes the GP will say it's normal when it's not that normal. It's low side of normal, and you might need higher, particularly things like vitamin D, vitamin B12, and your thyroid. If you're borderline thyroid, that can really affect your levels.
Yes.
So it's things like that to look at as well. So it's not always, if you're needing more and more estrogen, we need to take a look at what else is going on in a way.
So in terms of like you said 3 pieces of the jigsaw puzzle, can you kind of just explain what the
so
you need the 3 and what they do, how they interact with each other?
Okay, so when you're perimenopausal, I'll go through the stages. When you're perimenopausal, you've got swinging hormones, and your hormone levels, your estrogen levels are going up and down like a yo-yo. Your progesterone levels are dropping, but only dropping slowly. So sometimes, I see a lot of women who come in and they've read in America on some Google website about estrogen dominance. Perimenopausal, you might have moments when you're estrogen dominant, and it's about working that out and what to do. That's why over-the-counter herbal remedies. I just want to say one thing about herbal remedies is try and buy the ones that are pure without any additives. That's the only thing I say. Don't look for things that haven't got bulking agents, caking agents, magnesium oxide in them, because they're not the best quality. And you don't have to spend thousands on them, but actually it is better to get things that are as pure as you can get.
Okay.
Often looking on the internet at vitamin things and stuff. Right, that's just what I wanted to say. But other than that, so that's where perimenopause, you can get it, so it's going up and down. So sometimes your estrogen is higher than you want it to be, but we have to counterbalance that with progesterone. So it's all about balancing your hormones. When you get to be menopausal and your periods are getting rarer, your estrogen levels are dropped significantly. Your progesterone levels are dropping, but they're higher than your estrogen levels. When we give HRT, our aim with HRT is replace that lost estrogen. We're not trying to replace the progesterone. The reason we give you progesterone is if you've not had a hysterectomy, it's to protect the lining of your womb. So if you have too much estrogen, it behaves like it does when you're young, and it thickens up the lining of your womb ready for an egg implantation.
Okay.
And it hasn't got enough progesterone as you get older and menopausal to get rid of that.
Yeah.
So what you do is we give progesterone separate to that.
Okay.
As a tablet when you have, the gold standard of it. So that's where it fits in. As I said, as your estrogen drops, so when we're young, testosterone's our biggest hormone. When we get to 35, it drops off a bit, but the minute our ovaries are not working, it drops by another 50%. And then your estrogen's grabbing it to make it into estrogen. Your body's grabbing it to make it into estrogen. So you lose it all.
Which I never knew until you told me.
Yeah. No, lots of people don't realise that. But what we do, first of all, what the guidance says, the International Menopause Society, is we need to add back estrogen for a lot of women first. So people who are perimenopausal and have got low libido, you give them back their estrogen in the form of HRT. And if after 3 months, so that's often why I review women at 3 months. Well, mostly I do, because to see if their libidos come back, and obviously to see how they're getting on with their HRT, but they've usually contacted me before that if they've got problems. And then at that point, if they haven't got the libido back, or they're not sleeping, or their energy levels are low, or their confidence low, and they're not feeling on top of the world, then at that point we add in testosterone.
Okay.
The problem with testosterone is it's a slow burner. So it can take 6 to 8 weeks to start getting kicked in a bit. 3 months you're usually feeling a whole lot better, and so on. At 6 months you feel brilliant, but it does take a bit of time to kick it in properly.
And is there a reason for that compared to the other ones that?
No, I don't know. It's really weird, but most women that I speak to, it takes about 6 weeks, and we always say that, and it says on the guidance it's a bit of a slow burner, so 6 to 8 weeks for it to kick in. But it's just, I think probably because for most women who end up on testosterone, their testosterone levels are so low that actually to get up to a decent level takes quite a bit of time. So if you do get a testosterone, you need to have your bloods checked for testosterone levels at 3 months and then yearly thereafter to check they're not going too high.
And loads of my kind of like friends who are in the same boat as me, they like me have experienced the flooring fatigue as well, where you almost struggle to get out of bed, to be honest. And it lasts kind of say 4 or 5 days, and then actually you're fine again. And is that another kind of sign of hormones going topsy-turvy?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's the fatigue where you can't lift your head off the bed, off the pillow in the morning is classically. This is where, a lot of people ask me about weight gain. And
that's a whole other session, Hazel.
Another session, absolutely. But actually, it's about juggling your hormones, and but the fatigue is about getting the hormone balance right. And estrogen should give you your energy back. But again, as I say, if it doesn't, then we need to think about testosterone. The other thing to say is if people are on oral HRT, so tablet form of HRT, which people are often given by the GP, your symptoms might not completely go because your liver eats up a lot of the goodness in the HRT.
And then spits it back out. Yeah.
Bioavailability of it is a lot lower than the body identical stuff.
I was going to say, just before we wrap up on this session, Hazel, what is bioidentical? Because I must admit, when I heard about it, I thought that meant it was, like organic, but better for me.
Okay. So there's two things that you talk about. So what in practice generally and what is regulated is body identical. Your spray and your patches, but only the patches with estrogen in. So that it's called estradiol, and that's body identical because it's exactly the same as we produce ourselves in our bodies. It's also made from wild yams, so it's plant-based, but it is pharmaceutically manufactured. Okay. The progesterone part of it is also made from wild yams. It's micronized progesterone. And so that's where it comes from, and that's body identical as well to what we produce. Bioidentical are the lozenges that you can get that are compounded things from specialist pharmacies. In the UK, they are completely unregulated. And interestingly, I had a lady come in to get bloods done from me. She only wanted bloods doing. She'd been to see somebody who did bioidentical. She was on bioidentical lozenge. There was no evidence. She came to see me to get the bloods done because her GP wouldn't do her bloods, and she wanted to know what her estrogen levels were. And she had no estrogen in her body at all because she was really symptomatic. And you pay an awful lot of money. I think it's about £3 a day per tablet for this compounded stuff.
Wow.
It's quite a lot of money. And so and she was surprised.
Good
so
Lord.
She ended up going on to body identical, and her levels came back up.
Good Lord.
Yeah. So it's you want to go on regulated. Whatever you do, go on regulated. That the NHS, even if you have to get it, like women come to see me and they pay to come and see me, and then I give them a prescription right to their GP, and then they can get it on the NHS thereafter. And that's what you want to be able to do.
Yes. Yes, and actually it's a nice balance then between, Western medication and Western systems and looking at alternative forms of treatment, isn't it? It's that balanced approach in terms of you feel private, but you're not like, where I was describing Carol Vorderman going to Hardy Street, where you think it's like 500 quid before you blinked.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely. And it is, and that's quite expensive for the normal person.
Yes, and especially when you aren't even really thinking about it. I think, you know, when you're saying we should catch people in their 30s, to start thinking about, you know, not even just preparing their bodies hormonally, but how you can prepare yourself mentally, physically, in the holistic kind of view of it.
Absolutely, and it should be holistic. Everything, the care that you get should be holistic, and it's really easier said than done, because it's hard in a consultation to get over all the holistic bits, but actually it is. And women in their 30s, the other thing, which is another one we need to talk about, is how menopause is only a transition.
Yes.
It doesn't last forever. So your brain fog, your memory will come back as you get older, but that's a whole nother story as well.
And
you carry on talking about. Yeah.
Well, I need to go to my next session now. Thank you, Hazel. So that's
my pleasure.
A brilliant introduction. So I think so when I post it, I'll ask people, what do you want to talk about? We've got some ideas, but throw us your ideas and we'll chat about it.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. Thank you
no
very
worries.
much. Take care. I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you, lovely lady. Bye.